Yeah, so, well, as I think everybody here will probably already know, our guest this afternoon, Richard Holloway, is a writer, a broadcaster, and sometime man of the cloth, I've put. Sometime man of the cloth. Served as Bishop of Edinburgh, of course, from 1986 to 2000. I think that's right, yes. As Primus of the Scottish Episcopal Church from 92 to 2000. Born in Glasgow, same as me, Richard. We don't have the same accent, though, unfortunately. You studied in Nottinghamshire, and then in Edinburgh, and then in Union Seminary, I think. Yeah, all of that stuff. We've been everywhere. But of course, well known to us all for his progressive views on faith, ethics, social issues, etc. An outspoken advocate for human rights, LGBT inclusion, etc., etc. Over time, as we all know, his theological stance has evolved. We might prefer to say progressed, I'm not sure, leading him to change his views. Well, that in itself is not unfamiliar to any of us, I think. And this has been a journey, though, that's been played out on a much larger stage than it has for most of us. His writings, as we know, explore the intersection of religion, doubt, and humanity. And these things, along with his, I'd say, somewhat unique ability to engage his readers and his listeners and to take them on lyrical and evocative and erudite journeys, make him one of the most thought-provoking voices in contemporary religious discourse. I've not quite managed to count exactly how many books you've written, Richard, on theology, ethics, and philosophy. I think it's more than 20. More than 30. Oh, good heavens. It's a terrible addiction indeed. And you've done that whilst also holding various other roles as well. A remarkable achievement. Your ability to reflect on meaning, on loss, on life, all of those things are part of the reason that your work continues to resonate so much with us all. And you bring to it all a quality that's most lacking in contemporary discourse, which is, of course, nuance. So please, would you all join me in welcoming Richard Holloway?
Yeah, that'll be it. Thanks, that's lovely. And once again, I apologize, but it wasn't my fault, as we see in Scotland. Yep. So good afternoon, and I'm sorry I'm late. Norman McCaig, an Edinburgh school teacher of West Highland extraction, always spent his summers in Assynt in Sutherland in the northwest of Scotland. He was a poet, and that's where some of his best poems are set. One of them was called So Many Summers, and I'll read it to you now. Beside one loch, a hind's neat skeleton, beside another, a boat pooled high and dry. Two neat geometries drawn in the weather, two things already dead and still to die. I passed them every summer, rod in hand, skirting the bright blue or the splitting grey. And every summer saw how the bleached timbers gaped wider and the neat ribs fell away. Time adds one malice to another one. Now you'd look very close before you knew if it's the boat that ran, the hind went sailing. So many summers, and I have lived them too. What did McCaig mean by the malice of time in the final verse of his poem? Did he really believe that time's ravages were somehow calculated and intentional, in short, malicious? No, that's not how we read him. We understand the phrase as a piece of poetic license, and we know what he's getting at. The effect on individuals of time's relentless rush forward is always weakening, is sometimes cruel and is ultimately deadly for us all. McCaig had taught Latin in an Edinburgh secondary school, so he knew that the word malice came from malus, Latin for bad. But he did not mean that time was bad in itself, intentionally out to get us, like a serial killer patiently stalking his victims. He meant that neutral, thoughtless, indifferent time was bad for us, because it wears us out, and in the end, one way or another, we all die of it. In describing time like this, McCaig put his finger on the mystery of existence itself and our sometimes baffled attitude towards it. We humans may be frail, finite creatures, inhabiting a speck of dust, orbiting a star in an obscure arm of one of millions of identical galaxies, but it is in us that the universe has become aware and has started thinking about itself. There may be other self-conscious, reflective creatures inhabiting distant galaxies in the farthest reaches of the universe, but we are the only ones we know about, and we may be the only ones there are anywhere. So what are we to make of it all? Well, sometimes a good movie can help us to think things through. In Ridley Scott's sci-fi movie classic Blade Runner, a retired police officer called Rick Deckard, played by the actor Harrison Ford, is hired to chase down and retire biologically engineered humanoids called replicants, who serve as soldiers and slaves in off-world colonies. To prevent them developing emotions and the longing for independence that might result, the replicants have been engineered to have lifespans of only 4 years. But their designers fear that some of them have escaped to Earth, hunting for ways to prolong their existence. The replicants are built by the Tyrell Corporation, whose logo declares that its products are more human than human. During his investigation, Deckard visits the Tyrell headquarters, where he meets and falls in love with Rachel, a replicant, played by Sean Young. Rachel believes she is human because her consciousness has been enhanced with memories from the life of Eldon Tyrell's niece. So she's devastated when Deckard tells her that she is not what she thinks she is. Her memories are not her own. They are implants borrowed from someone else. In fact, she is not human. She is a robot destined one day to be shut down forever. Something similar to the shattering news that overwhelmed Rachel in Blade Runner hit the human community in the 19th century. Under the influence of generations of religious teachers, humans had been taught to think of themselves as having been, from the moment of their emergence on Earth, the fully formed, bipedal, reflective creatures, which in fact it had taken them millions of years to evolve into. Charles Darwin's publication of his book, The Origin of Species, in 1859, had shattered humanity's illusions about itself, much the way that Deckard had destroyed Rachel's. But in destroying the illusion of our genetic uniqueness, Darwin bequeathed a different kind of uniqueness to us humans, the knowledge that we are mortal and finite creatures who are on the way to final extinction. And we are now informed that trillions of years hence, long after the human race has disappeared from the scene, the same fate lies in wait for the universe itself. time adds one malice to another one, as McCaig reminded us, and its ultimate malice, apparently, is going to be the erasure of everything that has ever been. I'm going to quote a famous existentialist philosopher now. "A time will come," he wrote, "when this universe and nature itself will be extinguished. And just as of the grandest kingdoms and empires of mankind, and the marvelous things achieved therein, very famous in their own time, no vestige or memory remains today, so in like manner of the entire world and the vicissitudes and calamities of all created things, there will remain not a single trace, but a naked silence and a most profound stillness will fill the immensity of space. And so, before ever it has been uttered or understood, this admirable and fearful secret of universal existence will be obliterated and lost." That's a quote from Miguel de Unamuno, the great Spanish philosopher of doubt and existence. And so, to repeat the words I've quoted from him, what will the secret of universal existence have been once it has all been obliterated and lost, leaving behind not a single trace, but a naked silence and a most profound stillness? And I hope you're not utterly depressed by this time. I'll leave you to answer the question for yourself in your own way. All I can say for myself, after a lifetime wrestling with the question, is that I am no longer convinced that there is or ever has been an absolutely convincing answer by anyone, anywhere, to the question that the brute fact of the universe poses for us. But what I also know is that the thought of time's relentless thrust towards ultimate oblivion, after how many billions of years it will take to get to that point, I find sickening. And not just because I know that my own name is near the top of the extermination list. No, my disgust is not about its effect on me. It's about it, the universe, the huge thing that has been going on since it all kicked off, however many trillions of years ago it began. So let me start there, at the very beginning, as Maria in The Sound of Music reminded us, because it's a very good place to start. Scientists tell us now that the universe has been around for over 13 billion years. Doesn't the sheer pointless excess of that absurd timescale sicken you? It sickens me. It's absurd. It's overdone. And that's far from the worst of it. There is also the shattering destructiveness that has been a constant feature of its history. We humans have only been rampaging around for a few million of those 13 billion years, slaughtering each other enthusiastically in the name of the gods we have invented, to account for the weirdness of our own arrival on the scene as calculating, reflective, yet lethally destructive animals. But long before the universe got to our place in the script, destruction had been the theme of the drama no one had ever volunteered for a role in. Aeons before we humans were thrust blinking onto the stage, it was the dinosaurs who were brawling their way across it, only for them to be wiped out 65 million years ago, either by an asteroid or an earthquake. So what was the point of that? To whom was the point being made, and who, if anyone, was making the point? Difficult questions. The world's religions were invented to answer those questions, but most of their answers were dreamed up long before we knew anything about the age and immensity of the universe itself, or about humanity's comparatively recent appearance within it. Back then, before there were any scientists around to explain it to us, everything seemed smaller, younger, and easier to manage, and it was artists who gave us the best stories about it all. A favorite story was the one about the God who longed for the freely offered love of the human creatures he had made and domiciled in a delicious little garden called Eden. But one day he decided to put them to the test to prove their love. This was a bad idea, especially for a God who's supposed to know everything, because testing for love never proves anything except the bad faith of the tester. Predictably, the human creatures failed the test, so they were banished from the little garden they loved, even though it had also harbored a sneaky little snake. And they spend the rest of their lives trying to figure out how to get back into that primordial Eden. Now, sweet and compelling as that story undoubtedly is, what we now know about the age and immensity of the universe ruins it for us, except as a sad little myth about the nature of human discontent. Because if there ever was a God who made us to love him out of his life of everlasting loneliness, why did it take him so long to get round to producing us? And why did he need a universe as vast as this one on which to stage his little romance? Yes, I know it's just a fable about human discontent. And yes, it continues to tug at my own heart also, but it no longer explains anything. Because human beings no longer find themselves living in a sweet little garden in a snug little world. The scale of the setting in which humans find themselves has expanded exponentially, and their own significance within it has decreased by the same ratio. Nowadays, if they bother to think about the issue at all, humans see themselves as microscopic specks in the meaningless immensity of space. And yet, specks we may be, but thinking specks who've worked out the sickening vastness of the universe and its primeval thrust towards oblivion. And I quote Unamuno again, "So before ever it has been uttered or understood, this admirable and fearful secret of universal existence will be obliterated and lost." We figured that out. Some specks to have done all that, to have thought all that. And so this is where we should pause and wonder at ourselves. We are as amazing as the universe, and maybe even more amazing, because it is in us, and maybe only in us, that the universe has become aware of itself and has actually started thinking. You're doing that here today. It's what the PCN is all about, thinking impossible thoughts about impossible realities. And one of the things we think about is the vast and expanding universe that popped into existence trillions of years ago, and will one day return to the emptiness whence it came from. Yes, and it is a story, something told, but only because we humans have been around to tell it. Without us human storytellers composing sagas about it all, the universe would simply be a vast, impersonal surge of molten rock, thundering through time, careering from nowhere to nothing. But because of us, It has become narrative, something told and understood, even if it is only the kind of story that condemned prisoners whisper to each other in their cells the night before facing the firing squad in the morning. Yes, I repeat myself. It is now something told, not just something that happens. Rocks happen, trees happen, even the birds and the bees happen. But we humans do more than happen. We understand what is happening, and we turn it into story. This capacity to make a story out of the thrust of the universe towards final oblivion is our glory as well as our tragedy. It is our glory because we humans are the discoverers of the merciless passing of time, and we may be the only creatures in the wide immensity of the universe who understand it is happening. Yes, and knowing that is our tragedy, because it makes us aware of our finitude, our coming to an endness. However, one of the great advantages of being aware of time and its rush towards oblivion, its return to the void whence it came, is that we humans can learn to slow its progress by teaching ourselves to pause, look around, notice things before they disappear, and be grateful. That, I think, is the only word I want to leave with you today, gratitude. So I'll close my remarks with some words from another great poet, W.H. Auden. Looking up at the stars, I know quite well that for all they care, I can go to hell. But on earth, indifference is the least we have to dread from man or beast. How should I like it, were the stars to burn with a passion for us we could not return? If equal affection cannot be, let the more loving one be me. Amen to that, I say, amen. And so while we are here in our little pilgrimage through town, let us learn to love our neighbors as ourselves. And that's me done, and I'm sorry I was late.